You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.
This is the Option Industry Council's Wide World of Options. Before we start today's show, investors should know that options involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. You should not enter into an options transaction until you have read and understood the risk disclosure document, characteristics and risks of standardized options. This brochure is available by visiting optionseducation.org or by calling 1-888-OPTIONS. OIC makes no recommendation with respect to any financial firm. OIC does not make any warranty as to the accuracy, usefulness, timeliness, or the continued availability or existence of information created or maintained by others. Multiple leg strategies involve multiple commission charges. Opinions and strategies expressed by others are not necessarily those of OIC, nor does OIC endorse, warrant, or guarantee products, services, or information described or offered by such firms. Commissions, fees, margins, interest, and taxes have not been included in any of the examples used in this show. These costs impact the outcome of all stock and options transactions. Consult your tax advisor about any potential consequences. None of the information presented in this show should be construed as a recommendation to buy or sell security or to provide investment advice. Welcome to the Options Industry Council's Wide World of Options. OIC was created in 1992 to educate investors and their financial advisors about the benefits and risks of exchange-traded equity options. And the Wide World of Options radio show is one of the ways the message is spread. OIC also offers a variety of other resources to those interested in learning more about options, including webinars, podcasts, and live events. For more information, check out optionseducation.org. Now, here's your host, OIC's Director of Individual Investor Education, Joe Burgoyne.
Today's program is a rebroadcast from OIC's webinar program. Every month, we do webinars on a variety of options-related topics. Check out optionseducation.org for more information. Enjoy the show.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for attending the latest installment of the Option Industry Council's webinar series. My name is Mark Benzequin, and I'm a staff member here at the OIC. We're glad that you can join us to learn more about options as a flexible and powerful trading tool. In today's presentation, we're happy to provide something a little bit different than our usual fare. Rather than focusing on the hows and the mechanics of options trading, we're going to look at the whys and the psychology of trading with performance coach and licensed therapist Randy Howell. And as always, we'll take your questions and cover the material in a quick 60-minute session. Before we begin, I just want to go ahead and cover a few housekeeping rules that we have. As you know, that options involve risks and are not suitable for everybody. As a matter of fact, the characteristics and risks of standardized options is a booklet required by your broker in order to open a trading account, a copy of which can be obtained on our website, optionseducation.org, or by emailing our investor services team at options@theocc.com. Also, any strategies included or discussed in this presentation are not to be used as recommendations. They're simply for illustrative purposes only, and that those strategies suggested by the presenter are recommendations or suggestions by the presenter themselves and are not to be used by the OIC. Now, before we get into it, I just want to have a moment to introduce our presenter today, Randy Howell. Randy is the author of Mindful Trading, Mastering Your Emotions and the Inner Game, and travels all over the world speaking to traders just like you to help them harness their emotions and turn them from a financial weakness into the mental strength necessary to be a successful trader. The OIC is very lucky to have him join us today, and as I know that Randy has a wealth of information to share, let's get right to it. Randy?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mark, and I want to thank Joe, and I also want to thank the OIC. First of all, let's start right here, okay? Let's start looking at trading. First of all, trading is an endeavor where the emotional brain and the thinking brain have to work together. Yet, only thinking is taught in trading. No one talks about how to work with emotions. They're presented as kind of like a sidebar. Yet, emotions have everything to do with trading success. And what we want to do here, we come to trading with a certain mindset about winning that has not been examined from the light of trading. What exactly is that mindset? You're looking at it. How many of you have been in this situation where you know something, hey, I know how to win, I've got the discipline, I've got the confidence, I have a goal, I know what I'm going to do, I'm going to visualize that desired outcome, I'm going to have a can-do attitude, I'm going to make things happen, I'm going to work hard with urgency, I'm going to take no prisoners. The enthusiasm, the kind of the top-of-mind awareness of positive thinking, you build a plan and stick to it. You have a conquering mindset, and you have achievement striving. Have any of you ever seen that? This is the mindset that is taught as kind of the winning mindset, the winning attitude. And yet what happens is zillions of people come to trading, okay? And they accept it as the truth, and the moment they get to trading, they discover that it turns against them. And all of a sudden they start discovering all these things that have been so useful in the past to build career, to build academic success, to build career success. When brought to trading, something goes wrong. And what we want to do is start examining what that something is. Because ultimately what I'm here to tell you is the mind that you brought to trading, no matter how successful it's been in the past, is not the mind that's going to bring success in trading. That's a big one. I want you to really have that resonate with you as we continue through this presentation and go beyond it. So we sit there and go, wow, the reality of a winning mindset has to be rethought for trading. Ultimately, trading turns everything you've learned about winning and losing on its head. Okay? Because ultimately what you're looking at a brain and a mind that's learned to want to control outcome, make things happen, and never give up. Yet, what you discover in trading is that you're not in control. And that never giving up is a license for revenge trading. And you discover, you know something, I can be as confident as I want to be, but ultimately what this is about probability. It's not about outcome. And ultimately, what we discover at the very core, there has to be a fundamental change that occurs within all of us. And that fundamental change is the movement from a brain and mind focused on controlling outcome to a brain and mind focused on probability management. Big deal, friends. However, it's not that easy of a deal. It takes work to change what genetic predisposition has given to us over millions of generations and what we've been socialized to become. But let's start in the beginning, okay? Let's start where we're going, okay, why? What's this thing about the brain? Ultimately, the brain is an adaptive organ. And what it does, totally out of the sight of your everyday world that you live in, where you're just casually looking and listening to this presentation, your brain has figured out a way to survive. It's adapted you to be able to work in the environment that you live in. That brain is also organized to control outcome by winning or not losing. Okay? And in this graphic that you're looking at, what has to be really understood, particularly in the context of trading, is this, is uncertainty is interpreted as biological danger by the emotional brain. And the emotional brain controls what the thinking brain will think. So you can begin to see, oh, the genetic predisposition that I inherit from history is that, the moment that I hit uncertainty, it triggers a sense of threat in me. Yep. And when that threat is triggered, it turns to vulnerability. Vulnerability turns to confusion. Confusion is a direct route to the fight-flight response. And all of a sudden, you realize, oh my gosh, this is what's happening to me. And if you want to take a look at this, how does this look in trading when you this uncertainty business? Who has ever tried to pull the trigger, and despite as much confirmation as you can be allowed, what you do is you hold the trigger, you don't pull it, it goes away, and all of a sudden you're released from the grip of this fear, and you go, what was I thinking? Why didn't I pull that trigger? Well, you have just experienced the emotional brain interpreting uncertainty as dangerous, and it just absolutely hijacking the trading mind before you could even take action. That's what we're talking about here. Happens on a daily basis, happens all the time. I would not have a business if it weren't for this being rampant in every trader who's trying to learn how to move from a certainty-based mind to a probability-based mind. Because ultimately what we're talking about here is probability management demands focusing on the moment of performance rather than outcome. And, when it ultimately, once this thing triggers, understand there is a hot wire here that goes from uncertainty to vulnerability to confusion to fight-flight. If you've experienced, we've talked about pulling the trigger, if you've experienced revenge trading, if you've experienced overtrading, you've experienced the same thing. You've experienced like, oh my God, it's a threat. I'm going to get it back. I'm going to bring this thing down. And all of a sudden this predisposition takes over you, hijacks logical thinking where you should be taking a small loss, and before you know it, you're gambling your entire trading account. That's the way it works, friend. And we're going, wow, this is happening so fast. I didn't even know it was there. It's there, friends. And until you learn how to deal with it and work with it and slow it down and to change the emotions that engage uncertainty, you're going to stay not on the good side of the trading account. We're going to take a look at this one deeper. And if you get the PDF files, this slide is an enormously important one, because in this slide, what's described is exactly what's happening to you when you ask the question, what was I thinking? Have you ever had that? Have you ever had that? You're going back over your trade and you go, what was I thinking? I have no idea what happened to me. This slide shows you exactly what's happened. The way your emotional brain and your thinking brain are aligned together, okay, the way it works is that you're going to get sensorial data coming in to your hypothalamus, okay, to kind of an early part of your brain. And ultimately, it's going to make a decision based on history about whether or not this is a threat and needs immediate action, or whether or not it can send it to the thinking brain and to really logically look at it. It makes a decision in moments, and just moments, and then it can, in a hijacking, what occurs is that suddenly it's called the low road, and suddenly that whole impulse is taken to the amygdala, and the amygdala takes over everything. It just hijacks the thinking mind's ability, just absolutely cuts it off, and you start acting from an emotional or reactive position. And by the way, that takes 12 milliseconds, the blink of an eye. Okay? Meanwhile, for thinking to occur, that information has to get out of the hypothalamus and it has to go to the thinking brain. That takes 40 microseconds, almost a half a second. Okay? So I want you to look at it. The chemistry's already on, the hijack's already gone, and the low road has just dominated. That's happening in your revenge trading. That's happening in not being able to pull the trigger. That's happening when you panic and lose your stuff in the middle of a trade when it's bouncing on you and you can't follow your rules. That's what's happening, friends. This is what has to get solved one way or the other, and we're going to be showing you how you can solve that thing, okay? But this is how your logical brain, the one that with all that knowledge, all that wonderful knowledge that you've learned, this is what happens to it under the stress that trading presents, under the challenges, under that stress. That hypothalamus is interpreting that literally as threat, as biological threat. It's short-circuiting your ability to think and sending it to the emotionally reactive amygdala, and bam, that's when you do all that reactive stuff. That's what's going on with your trading right now. And we're going to be discussing what a solution to this can be. But first, let's just get this thing, again, what I want you to do is graphically see this. This is what I would call, this is when you're looking at this glitch in this survival brain. Remember, that survival brain works on a completely different logic than your thinking brain. You cannot out-logic your way to success in trading. What you have to do is you have to learn how to work with the emotional brain. Otherwise, that lizard is just going to come out and it's going to take over all those good plans of yours, that great strategy of yours, and all of a sudden you're not going to be able to follow your rules because suddenly you're in survival mode rather than in probability mode. And this is the glitch that has to be retrained. Okay? Otherwise, the hijacking is going to continue, and ultimately, understand this, to the emotional brain, the risk of money is a risk life. Okay? So this is what we're looking for, or it can be the enhanced status, winning. That's what happens when you win. You feel, right. That's status. It's a survival base. So understand, this is what we're talking about. When you're having these problems in trading, this is what's going on. A lot of it is not psychological, friends. A lot of this is just simple biology that we have inherited from our forefathers, from our ancestors, and from cave people. This is the way the brain learned to adapt and form for us to survive in a very dangerous world. If you notice, there's no lions, tigers, and bears anymore. But don't tell the emotional brain that. It doesn't know and doesn't care. So ultimately, now that we've gone through this, and I hope you have an understanding of what the problem is now, okay? Because a lot of people are just bewildered by why they can't follow their rules. This would be so simple if I could follow my rules. If I followed my rules, I'd be making money. But the problem is as try as I might, I can't follow my rules. You've just seen why. So what I want you to get, the winning mind that created your success before trading now becomes the obstacle, the very brick wall that you continue to hit. Okay? There is a shift that has to occur. You have to retrain this brain to move from this certainty-based thinking to a probability-based thinking. It can be done, friends. Okay? But the problem that most people have is they say, well, yeah, I'm going to get this. It's nothing. What they do is they continue their bad habits and they continue to traumatize themselves. You blow up several accounts, you bleed profusely in your account over a period of time. Each one of those trades, each one of those losses, each one of those setbacks of not being able to manage the mind properly creates a traumatic memory that suddenly puts you in hypervigilance. And suddenly, it's very common. I work with a trader where she thought that she was having problems literally as she began to really qualify a setup. She said, I'll start getting the point. I'll start getting scared. With each confirmation that comes in, it comes to that moment where I'm almost sick of pull the trigger when I even get the confirmations. Then it goes past me, and I just can't understand why. You see that on one hand, but ultimately what we discovered was happening with her is that the dread of that very moment was occurring right after breakfast when she went to the sink with her dishes and started washing. She turned on the water tap, and what happened is that's when the dread started. So what happens is that though she had been very successful in her career before, what she discovered is that that very mind, that perfectionistic mind that had produced so much success, doing the right things, what happened is she discovered that doing the right things in trading did not mean success. It just means you were doing all the right things, and the truth is that the trade was still probability. This is the wall you run into. So let's kind of place this thing. Now we've seen kind of like the biology and a little bit of the psychology behind the problem that occurs with your mind while trading. Let's look at it in a deeper context now. okay? Let's take a look at trading as a system. And let's start saying, you know something? Let's break it down into the three-legged stool called trading success. The first piece is your trading system. That's your platform. That's all those cool screens you have. That's what runs all that stuff and tells you that, you know, this is the stuff and you want it running right. You don't want it freezing. You want it, all that stuff. You got to have it in the kind of lightning world we live in. Then comes your methodology. That's how you manage risk. And a lot of people, they spend a lot of time, they can talk candles, they can talk trading. Yet, when it comes down to it, what happens is they're very knowledgeable and they have a very good system. But what happens is the potential of their methodology is never realized because what they have not accounted for is trader psychology. What are the beliefs in action that you're projecting onto the markets? Because your beliefs, whether or not they're effective at managing uncertainty or not and extracting capital out of the markets, are reflected directly in your trading account. A lot of people can lie to themselves, deceive themselves, and they can make up all sorts of stories about how glorious they are. And a lot of people who teach trading will say, you know, yeah, I wish people would admit they're having problems. All we hear about are traders who hit the home runs and do this, that they talk about what great stuff they are. But they'll say, I know he's losing money, but he won't talk about his losing trades where we could actually learn something. No, he's not looking at the beliefs about his inability to manage uncertainty. Ultimately, that's the key. And as long as you avoid it or believe, oh, my trading psychology is fine, and yet you're stagnant or you're losing money in your trading account, there is a gap between what you're talking about yourself and the reality of your trading account. And in our view is that the trading account is the only honest friend you have about finding the problems, the glitches in your belief system that you're projecting onto the markets. Because ultimately, what you're doing is that in your belief systems, they're going to be rooted in survival instincts, okay? And they're going to be rooted in your sense of adequacy, your sense of mattering, your sense of worth, and your sense of power. And when you're engaged in working with the markets, you're getting a true reflection in your trading account of what those beliefs really are. You've got to dig them out, and that's why most people just simply don't do the psychology, because they're scared of what they're going to find inside their head. The truth is, if you're a human being, you're going to find a mess that you need to take responsibility for and to reorganize into a mind that can deal with probability. That's the facts of it. Otherwise, you can become part of the 95% of people who lose money every day in trading. By taking responsibility, you open up the possibility of becoming the part of the 5% that extract capital out of the markets. So what do you want, okay? So let's look at it this way. How in the world do you go about constructing a mind that does trade, okay? What we're looking to do is to be able to merge biology, brain, emotion, circumstance, and experience and forge a mind that can enhance your ability to survive long-term in the markets, okay? Basically, what we're really saying is that you need to become smart emotionally. You need to learn how to, instead of avoid emotions, you need to learn how to use emotions. Ultimately, what you learn, friends, is this, is that emotions aren't optional. There's no such thing as freedom from emotion, but there is, thank God, freedom of emotion. You can't stop the uncertainty, okay? However, you can stop the mind that meets uncertainty. What you bring with you from evolution is equating uncertainty with vulnerability to fear. You can reroute that so that you have a completely different emotional response to the uncertainty. And I can teach you how to do that. Okay? So the thing is, what we're looking to do is to build a very completely different paradigm for a success mind. Okay? Where probability mindset rather than winning mindset. Okay, this is enormously important because I want you to think about this. Okay, there's all sorts of sayings that in front of where I played football in high school. There was a big, huge sign that said, "Losers never win, and winners never lose." And what you see, and you'll hear one other coach said, you show me someone that's comfortable with losing, I'll show you a loser. What you discover in trading is that you had better become a very good loser. A very good loser. Not just a loser, but a very good loser. You're going to have to learn to minimize loss because you cannot control outcome. And winning becomes very different. It's not controlling outcome. Winning to the probability mindset is being able to forge the mind that engages a moment of performance. You can control the mind that engages performance, okay? But you cannot control the outcome. But if you control the mind that engages performance, okay, what you've done is you have a psychological edge that feeds your method edge. Then you're really cooking. What does this look like in nature? I'd like to talk about the cougar, the American cougar, to you for a moment. He's the apex predator in the United States and Canada and parts of Mexico. And interestingly, he's a big cat. He's 150. The female's 150. The males can get up to 250. So they're a big cat. And ultimately, what happens is that they're not like the African lion. They don't stalk. They don't chase their prey. And if you look at the African lion, they get hurt a lot. They get kicked in the jaw, they get gored, they get all that stuff. Yet, if you look at the way the cougar, as powerful of an apex predator that he is, the way he hunts, it's really amazing. He sits in a tree or on a rock ledge, and what he does is he waits very patiently for the deer to walk into the setup. Then he springs, and when he springs, it's very interesting, is that he does not kill by strangling or suffocating or wrestling and biting. He kills by snapping the neck of the deer on the way down. If the deer's neck is not snapped, the deer runs, and the cougar does not chase. He sees that as a loss, and he minimizes the loss by not getting hurt, expending extra energy, his account, and he climbs the tree, starts the process over again, looks for another setup. That's exactly what traders need to be doing. They're patient. They wait for the setup, okay? They're not making things happen. When it's there, they're ready, they're prepared, they're focused, and they spring. If it doesn't happen the way they want it to happen, what they do is they get out with a small loss. If it goes their way, okay, what they do is they make the kill. They get the money and run. So what I want you to see is the enormous difference is that this is an alpha. This is an apex predator. But he's not trying to control outcome. He's not trying to win. He is performing. Okay? He's disciplined. He's impartial. He's not trying to make something happen. He's not trying to chase opportunity. He's waiting for the opportunity to come to him. And when it comes there, he's ready. Does this not sound like the trader that you need to be? Absolutely. So now we have kind of an idea about what winning would look like. Now what we do is we go, well, okay, now, if you're with me so far, you're going, okay, I get it that Randy's talking about the way our mindset about winning that has been successful in other domains is not successful in the environment called trading. It's not that it's a bad mindset. It's just that it doesn't work in the environment called trading. And you're going, okay, I see it now. Okay, I see that it's not like I've been wrong or anything like that, but I have to be responsible for the mind that I'm bringing into the management of uncertainty. Because, in corporate and business, that alpha mentality, that making things happen, that being a winner worked, but I recognize that there's a different set of rules here. The first thing, though, is this, is you're going to have to decide you're willing and want to change the mind that you bring to trading. Some people are so comfortable that they're just simply not willing to make that transformation, okay? At the same time, if you're willing to make that transformation and you're going, you know something, I recognize I've lost enough money, I've messed around enough time that I recognize what I'm doing right now is not working. Though I really desperately want it to work, it's not working. I have to acknowledge it. I need to look at my psychology and recognize it's not a bad psychology. That's not the point, friends. It's just that it's not a workable psychology for the environment. That's what I'm asking you to look at. We teach a 5-step process. It's pretty simple in its concept, and there's not really new material here. Golly, you know, some of this stuff's been around for thousands of years. Other parts of it have been around for 30 or 40 years since the advent of neurobiology, and there's other elements of it that are proprietary information from us. But the deal is, the very first thing is in developing emotional intelligence, being able to learn how to use emotions. The very first step there is to develop a sense of emotional regulation. You have to be able to take the emotion that is going to trigger the moment that you engage uncertainty. It is. And you have to be able to regulate it so that it doesn't go down fight-flight route. You have to be able to learn to manage the intensity so that it stays, instead of it, say, fear or fright or fight, it stays at a level of concern where you're focused. That's called emotional regulation, friends. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Mindfulness, this is where you really begin to go, you know, I have been blind to what's going on inside my mind. That's what I get from traders all the time, is that as they develop a mindfulness practice and start looking, is they start going, you know something, I had no idea. There was a lot going on underneath the hood of my mind that I wasn't aware of. I need to become more aware. And it just so happens you need to learn how to do that. And by the way, that skill's been taught since the Buddha 2,500 years ago. The emotional regulation's been taught by the yogas from about 4,000 years ago, and the Jews from about 4,000 years ago. So you see this running down the history, okay? Then the big deal is using mindfulness, applying mindfulness, and discovering the internal dialogue. I'll talk about that a little bit more, but let's just say that when you're in self-doubt or when you're in grandiosity and you're getting revved up to jump into trades you shouldn't be in, there's an internal dialogue going on in your mind, and man, if you don't clue into it, you are sunk. The fourth thing, though, is you have to be able to build an intentional mind. You have to be able to start saying, you know something, how do I start using emotions? How do I start training my emotions so that the emotions of discipline and partiality show up to engage uncertainty? And how can I pull up self-compassion, self-nurture, self-soothing to calm my fears down or my anger? And how do I muster and find the courage to face my own personal dragons? These are emotional programs that live within you that you need to learn how to turn on and becoming part of your working mind. Talk about that a little bit more. But then you have to start realizing that, oh my God, you know something, I just can't bring any old mind to trading. What happens is I have to produce a practice that allows me to produce an intentional mind that I bring to trading day in and day out. And if I'm not in that mindset, if I can't get into that intentional mind, I don't trade. Because at that particular time, you discover not trading is very good trading because you're not doing compromised trading. So, where it starts with emotional regulation is you really truly begin to recognize that, you know something, the problem here is that my emotional brain is built around survival instincts, and it takes over the trading mind. And until I can learn to regulate the instincts that I have basically been genetically default programming by, I'm not going to get anywhere, because ultimately what you discover is that being smart, having a high IQ, doesn't get you very far in trading. I would actually say in the world too. But the thing is being able to crunch numbers, being able to have a lot of information in your mind is useless if you can't have access to that information under stress. That's why EQ, emotional intelligence, is far more important than IQ. And it just so happens that in trading, there is very little emotional intelligence work taught. And that's really unfortunate because emotional intelligence can be taught, whereas IQ basically is you're pretty much stuck with a particular range just on your genetics, okay? But what I want you to do to kind of dramatize this, I want you to look at your brain on trading. This is what your brain sees when you are risking capital. It does not make the distinction that the risk of capital is not the risk of your biological self. So ultimately, from your caveman ancestors, what you inherit is that uncertainty, that risk where you could lose. What losing used to mean in that time is death. And what you're looking at is this guy right here. He's facing imminent danger in his environment. He has every right to be scared. However, the thing is when you're trading, there is not imminent danger to your biological self. However, your emotional brain doesn't know that. It triggers, okay, the hypervigilance activates the arousal of the emotion. It starts cranking up, and if you don't calm it down, it becomes a feeling. Feeling is not this touchy-feely stuff. It is actually the chemistry of the emotion pulsing through your body, pulsing through your brain, changing the way you think. And when you start thinking, well, what was I thinking? This is exactly what's happened. It's gone to the amygdala. It's triggered this fear response or anger response. The chemistry is no longer arousing. It's triggering and feeling. The chemistry in your body is altering the way you think. You have been hijacked. You have been possessed by a different emotional state. So it's flooding, and it compels you to attack, avoid, or approach, depending on the direction the emotion's taking you. The emotional belief behind that is the big deal. Is ultimately, in this work, what you have to be able to do is you have to be able to dissect what's happening as your mind engages uncertainty, and you have to get at the beliefs that are actually causing the emotional reactions. And the truth is, most traders, if they get past the talk, what they'll discover very quickly is that the problem is that they honestly believe that they're not going to be able to handle it. Okay? This has to change. This is where mindfulness starts coming in. Ultimately, what mindfulness is beginning to notice what you're noticing. It's beginning to be able to step back out of thought and to recognize that you and your thoughts are not the same. As a matter of fact, they're not your thoughts. You're not having thoughts. What you discover is that thoughts are having you. And until you start practicing the ability to observe thoughts, it's so easy to fuse to the thoughts, and you'll end up in all sorts of debates about revenge, debates about, golly, boy, I'm going to beat myself up. You find yourself in all these things, and all of a sudden you start backing out and you realize, oh my God, this is just one organization of a potential self. Remember, your brain is organizing you into a potential self as you grow up, as you do this stuff. And that original self is just simply was the one that got organized before you could think. So we need this mindfulness to look at the thoughts and recognize that me and my thoughts are not the same. And then we say, well, what is the brain? What is the mind? Well, here's the big shocker, okay? In neurobiology, what we've really basically discovered is that the brain is best seen as a committee of rival programs, emotional programs, that duke it out and give rise to thoughts in the mind, okay? So ultimately, what happens is what starts out as emotional programs duking it out. If you've ever seen the movie Inside Out by Pixar Disney, they are able to show this in a beautiful way of how different emotional programs are in rivalry and competition with one another to produce the mind of the child. Same thing happens with you. The difference is that in mindfulness, you begin to wake up to this and you realize that I have an unruly mind. I need to organize and bring discipline to the mind that trades. So this is an enormous, powerful thing that you're learning about your brain and your mind. It's a committee. And what's happened is you haven't known it's a committee, and yet it's all sitting there. So ultimately, from there you start going, well, what you need to notice the internal dialogue. This is where your self-fulfilling beliefs are hidden and waiting for you to find. And you'll find it all the time. And actually, it's a better photograph on the next one. Go to the next one, Doris. Is that you find this internal dialogue, and who has not experienced this? If you've ever had moments of self-doubt, what you've discovered there is a critical voice, a judgmental voice, and this voice of, oh my God, this kind of adapted voice of what we'd call I'd actually call it the orphan's voice. It's the amygdala. Okay, but what you discover is that you're in a debate in your head anyway, whether or not you like it or not. It depends on the debate. And so you recognize most of your trading has been done by this inner critic, either tempting you to chase trades or lambasting your capacities. And what you'll discover about the inner critic is it says a lot of things, but there's very little evidence to support it. The problem is you haven't been observing it, so you didn't know all the lying going on in your head. So that's one of the big things. You learn how to spot that. But you can't stop there because you just can't logic your way out of it. The difference here, the next thing is when you start really taking change seriously, is you recognize that there are other emotional programs in the brain and in the mind that if you activated them, they would create a completely different experience of engaging uncertainty. Okay? This you have to learn to bring forward, but they're inherent in your humanness. And what we're going to do is we're going to teach you how to bring them to the forefront so they're active in your mind rather than sitting back there unused. And what are they? Well, the ones that we're interested in to produce a mind that can trade, we're interested in this. We're interested in a mind rebuilt. And what I want to tell you about these particular residential programs is that in the same way that fear and judgment are part of your mind, they're not going to go away, okay? So are the courage of a warrior. So are the discipline of a ruler. So are the impartiality of a sage. And so are the self-compassion of a caregiver. These are emotional programs in your brain that give rise to what we would call archetypes, kind of inner energies that allow you to act from discipline, okay? And this is when you start finding, and the way we teach this is we go into memory and we teach people how to deconstruct memory and to reconstruct the memory and find a time when you actually experience the discipline, the courage, the impartiality, and the self-soothing so that you know for a fact it's real. That we're not talking visualization. We're not talking affirmations. We're actually talking about something that did in fact happen, and we're teaching you how to pull it forward. Then what we're doing is we're saying now that you have access to the emotional program and can pull it up and face uncertainty from there, that's biology. We're going to go to the psychology and say the interesting thing is that these programs take on a symbolic value when they become mind. Suddenly you discover that the ruler is the discipline that you need in trading. And you think about something like a Winston Churchill and literally just the absolute bulldog that he was that helped hold the Allied forces together against Nazi Germany. You think about the warrior, about being able to face your dragons, about being able to recognize that courage is not the absence of fear, it's acting in the presence of fear and recognizing that it may take on a heroic figure for you. For me, it takes on the totem of a wolf. At the same time, the most missing emotional program or archetype for traders is self-compassion, self-soothing. We have to learn to soothe the fear because understand, uncertainty happens and fight-flight is going to happen to an untrained mind. You have to, the first training is soothing it down, calming it down rather than beating yourself up. Most traders beat themselves up thinking it's going to make them a better trader. I have not met one trader yet that has become a better trader by beating themselves up. It just digs the fear deeper. But using these 4 archetypes, these 4 emotional programs, we create a mind that can engage uncertainty. Powerful stuff. This is stuff that is inherent in your brain. Okay? What we all want is the discipline to maintain order under pressure and the impartiality to think clearly under pressure. That's the mind that you want to engage uncertainty. You need the courage of the warrior and the self-compassion of caregiver to calm the fear of this orphan part of yourself we've talked about, and the courage to confront the inner critic part of you, the judgment, the criticism, the temptation. They all work in concert with one another to produce a probability-based mind, and it can be taught. Step 5 is intention. You have to become the change, friends. Ultimately, you have to own and become responsible for the beliefs that you're truly projecting onto the market. Okay? And the ones that your trading account will not allow you to lie about. That will take the light of awareness and say, this belief is not, this is the one you talk about, but it's not the one you act from. Because remember, the only thing you control in trading is the process. It's the mind that you bring to performance. We want to know what belief system is there at the moment of performance. Ultimately, you tell by looking at your trading account whether or not you have a belief system that can effectively engage uncertainty and extract capital out of the markets. That's what we're looking for. So it has to become intentional. You have to train yourself. And yes, we teach that training. Okay, now, out of this, you're ready to meet your dragons. You're ready to meet the dragons of fear, of sabotage, of grandiosity, of overconfidence, and impulse. You're no longer doing it from weakness, though. You're doing it from inherent strength. This is the power. You've actually built the mind. You've learned how to access parts of yourself under pressure that you did not know how to access, and now you're learning how to bring it into personal mind during performance. This is when you actually discover that you can learn from your mistakes. This is when you learn from your dragons, you learn from your fear, and that's how you master your fears. You don't control your fears, you master them. And out of that, you end up with a performance mind that can deal with probability. Okay? That's the deal. So, friends, what we've just talked about is the psychological edge that drives performance in trading. Okay? With it, what happens is that you engage uncertainty from a probability-based mindset. Okay? This is the new winning mindset needed for trading. It replaces the old winning mindset that says, I have to win. I have to be a winner. The truth is, no, you don't. What happens is winning only becomes landing on the right side of probability. Losing only becomes landing on the wrong side of probability. No reason to get excited, no reason to get distraught. What happens is you control performance. That is your winning cue. This is the mind you control. This is what we teach, friends. So, ultimately, how do you actually build this intentional mind? That's really the key. Is that ultimately, you are going to bring a mind populated with emotional programs to the game of trading. There's no freedom from emotion. My question is, who is going to populate your trading committee? Is it going to be the same old with wishful thinking that somehow, somewhere, things are going to change and your boat's going to come in? Or do you take proactive action and decide, you know something, what I recognize is that I need to become responsible for the mind that I bring. I am the designer, I am the captain of this destiny. And what happens is I need to start showing up. I need to start controlling what I can control, the mind I bring to trading. So, how do you become the change? Well, we have a couple ideas, obviously. The first thing is make sure you know your trading strategy. The other thing is that if you do not know us, please go to our website and get our free ebook. Okay? The website's down there. It's the My Trader's State of Mind. But start out, get the free ebook, okay? That will start giving you a lot more information. But then what I want you to do is explore the website. It is a content-rich. There's access to over 100 videos. There are hundreds of articles. There is all sorts of stuff on that website. There are also explanations for two of our big, powerful programs. The group course, which we have one starting in January, it's a great course. It's an inexpensive course that allows you to be able to go in and learn the tools that you need to be able to build the mind for trading. Go to the website, learn about it. The other is the individual course, and that's really, truly being mentored by me with the psychology end of it. And ultimately, the major piece there is it comes with 10 sessions with me on Skype. And it's enormously comprehensive and highly personalized. Okay? That's the big deal. So what I want you to do, there's also lots of other things on the website, but the major thing, if you have seen me present and you're looking at this for another time, take the next step. Start taking a look and saying, am I really going to be responsible for the mind I bring to trading, or am I going to keep looking for good luck? If you're really serious, okay, particularly about the individual course, ask for a free consult with me. Just hit Contact Us. Dolores will arrange the time that you and I can meet, and we'll look at it really deeply. You will be able to decide whether or not this is something that you want to pursue or not. And the deal is that it's your mind, it's your trading. So I want to thank you for coming, and I think we've got a few minutes left for some questions. So, Mark, you got any questions there for me to answer?
Yeah, absolutely, Randy, we do. Anytime that there's a new concept that's presented to us, obviously new learning brings new questions. So we do have several that I'd like to get to with the time remaining. You had mentioned earlier about emotional hijacking.
Yeah.
Karen is asking for a further explanation about emotional hijacking, what it is and how does it happen.
Emotional hijacking is a phenomenon where basically your emotional brain that is wired for survival is put into a position where it does not believe that it can manage the situation from a rational standpoint. And what it does is it hits a button that absolutely, it brings down an axe over the connection from the emotional brain to the thinking brain, cuts it out, runs everything to the amygdala, and literally thinking is cut off. And you act from instinct, from survival instinct, not from reason at all. That's what an emotional hijacking is. It's very powerful, very common in trading, and people don't understand the phenomenon behind it. And ultimately, it's something that you can learn to manage, that you can regulate the intensity of the emotion before it kicks in and takes over mind. And that's where the first big steps in both fear management and impulse management happen. So, Karen, that's a good question.
Now, here's another question for you, Randy. There's something that we would talk about on the trading floor, and something that in our presentations we tell traders when putting out a position. And the phrase that we use all the time is plan the trade and trade the plan. So, somebody's asking a question. Steve is asking the question if he'd be good at making money if he could only follow his own rules. Why is it so hard to follow the rules that you set as a trader? Why is it hard to stick to the plan?
Well, it goes back to the survival instinct, because ultimately what happens is that, it seems, you plan your trade, you trade your plan, blah, blah, blah. What happens is that doesn't assume that emotion has anything to do with anything. If you grasp that you are not a rational being, if you grasp that you are an emotional being, that has a rational side to it, you would have a much better understanding of the dilemma that we have when we're trying to follow the plan. Ultimately, what happens in most of the stuff that I see in my work with traders is that they get into a situation, and it could be at entry, it could be at trade management, it could be fear of missing out. But what happens is that fear cranks up, or impulse cranks up, anger cranks up, and suddenly what happens is you're no longer thinking from the rational mind that you need for being able to trade your plan. And suddenly that's why you get hijacked, and suddenly after it's all over with, you come back and go, well, what happened? I was supposed to be trading my plan. And the problem is you can't do that unless you know how to regulate emotions and be able to say, you know something, not just regulate emotions, but actually come to the moment of realizing, you know something, I realize fight, flight triggered here, and what happens is I need to learn how to regulate the fight, flight, and I need to be able to produce a very different kind of observer that engages the uncertainty, or I will continue to trigger the fight, flight. And Mark, I actually have guys in my advanced work, I actually have guys that are wearing heart rate monitors as straps on their chest, and they're using readouts where they are watching their heart rate, and the moment that it goes beyond a certain range, they realize that they've tripped fight flight. It hasn't hit emotional hijacking, but it's hit arousal, and the devices are voice activated, so it's actually telling them they're moving from one zone to another zone. And what they do is they realize I'm about at the point where I'm about to lose control of being able to trade my plan. I'm about to start becoming a bucking horse in a burning barn. And what they're able to do is regulate themselves back, the emotional arousal back into a range that they can manage, and they can get their rational mind back online. That's
pretty amazing.
And I have guys like literally on the Chicago floor and stuff like that doing that. And they have the little chest monitors on them, and it gives them an enormous advantage because they're no longer having to become the observer of their physical arousal, that they have a machine that's helping them to observe, and it really helps them keep their mind balanced so that they can stay in the plan that they were doing rather than get hijacked into fight flight.
Well, that's terrific. Now, how about this? Dwight is asking, how do you deal with greed trading?
Well, greed, if you look at greed, and I actually, often it's not really greed that I see. It's actually lust, okay? Not lust in a sexual way, but lust like, I got to have it. Lust is much more emotionally driven, but even with greed, when you take those two, if you understand greed as an emotion, the emotion is saying, you know, you better take what you can get right this second because you don't know if it's going to be there later. Really good for cavemen because, you know, they didn't have refrigeration, they didn't, you know, when they got a kill, they better take it right then, they better gorge, they better, you know, and all that stuff. The thing is that in greed, what you're looking to do is once you regulate the emotion, you're realizing there is a belief system here. And what does the belief system say? What does the internal dialogue say? Because you will have an inner critic saying that you need this, you need this, you need this, you deserve it, you deserve it, you deserve it. And you will have a part of you, what I call this orphan part, the amygdala part of your biology, going, if I only get this, I will matter, I will show them, I will be somebody if I get this. And that's that esteem that's, is really deeply wound into our biology, is that status is really important. And if I'm greedy, if I get more, what happens is that I have more survivability. That's at the core of the biology, and then it gets psychological. But what you're looking for in this, I'm going to go directly to kind of more to the punchline here, is you're looking at the belief and you're looking at mattering, okay? Is that if I win this money, if I get all this stuff, if I can take all this stuff, I will feel really good and I will matter. I will prove that I'm worthwhile. And that is a very dangerous belief to bring into trading where you do not have control over outcome. So that's what I would say.
Okay, about greed trading. Okay. Now, Randy, during that explanation, you mentioned the inner critic. Can you talk a little bit more about that, the inner critic in trading, specifically regarding self-doubt and overtrading?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question, and I often never get to this, and I shy away from it. But at the same time, if you have ever had self-doubt, okay, you know that there is this dialogue going on within you, and there is this part of you that keeps harping, there is highly critical, that is judgmental or tempting. If you happen to have problems with revenge trading or overtrading, you'll find that it's a seducing kind of thing. And the inner critic goes way back in cognitive behavioral therapy. We call it the critical voice. In transactional analysis, it's known as the critical parent. In ancient Chinese philosophy, it is the yin of yin-yang, the destructiveness, where it's seeking your destruction. The Cherokee Indians of North America would say that there was a dark wolf and a white wolf that lived within you, and the dark wolf was going to bring down your destruction. That's the inner critic, okay? And what you discover is that it's part of your brain. It's a resident program in your brain, and I actually call it, in some of my courses, I actually call it the backseat driver. It's always sitting there being critical, and practically every positive thinking course you read is that you're going to out-positive it. The truth is that Jesus tried that, and he beat the rebuke with the accuser, but the accuser only went away looking for a more opportune time. So the thing is you need to learn that the inner critic lives within you. You need to be aware that it does criticize, it does tempt, it does try to seduce, and it's just a part of your humanness. It's not going to go away. I wish it would. Our politics would be enormously different if we could get rid of the critical voice. But it's there, and it has to be dealt with, and it's the one that keeps harping about your inadequacy, your sense of not mattering, your need to matter, your sense of worth, and your powerlessness. This is never going to work out. Why am I doing this? That's not you. That's the inner critic living within you that your observer has become so focused on that it fused to it, and suddenly you think these are my thoughts. And the truth is, no, those are not your thoughts. That's the inner critic living within you, and you have not built the mind yet that can confront it. And traders try to ignore it all the time. It is impossible to ignore in trading.
Okay, well, that's a great way of looking at it. Thanks for that explanation, Randy. And, I just want to thank you. We're out of time here, but, Randy, I certainly want to thank you for joining us and sharing your valuable insight. And, ladies and gentlemen, to all of you for taking the time out of your day to join us as well. And not just today, but all year long. All of us here at the OIC are eternally grateful for your continued support of our OIC webinar series. And before we say goodbye, I just want to remind everyone that our investor services team will be responding to your questions and comments that we didn't get to today or in your survey. So please take a moment to fill that out and keep an eye out in your email inbox for our responses. And you can also reach us direct at options@theocc.com for any and all of your options-related questions. Like all of our presentations, today's event is recorded, archived, and will be available for replay shortly via the same link that you used to join us today. In the meantime, please feel free to explore the rest of our educational resources on our website, optionseducation.org, and be sure to follow us on social media by liking us on Facebook and following us on Twitter for all the latest OIC events. So good night, everyone, and thanks again for supporting us here at the OIC.
You've been listening to the Options Industry Council's Wide World of Options. If you have questions about anything you've heard on today's show, email Joe Burgoyne at options@theocc.com. or visit optionseducation.org and chat with Investor Services. Interested in connecting with OIC on social media? Like the OIC page on Facebook. Follow them on Twitter at options_edu and Instagram at optionseducation, and follow their page on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening, and be sure to tune in to the next episode of Wide World of Options.
The preceding program was a production of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/The Options Insider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.